story.
Must have been a good Oprah today.
Just a little family drama, no biggie.
It's a little biggie.
Yeah, what's going on?
I told my mother about me getting married, and it was slightly ugly.
So here are your answers for the Name That Scene. The first scene was Lorelai gifts Rory with a decorative hammer that she can use on her house building. And then the second scene was Jackson just told Suki that he's ready to move in with her, and Suki's cracking up. Okay, so I just finished season 2, episode 2, Hammers and Veils. It's all about the wedding. Lorelai she's kind of starting to get excited. Like, she's overwhelmed at all the decisions, coming up with like her veil, her dress. Like, she's overwhelmed, but she's at the same time starting to get excited and kind of like getting in the momentum of, oh my goodness, I'm getting married. Oh my goodness. And so I kind of like that part of it. And of course, my Max was in it. So you already know Max Medina. But I will say I'm kind of very nervous to watch the next few episodes because I don't think he's going to be in the show for much longer. And that's honestly going to break my heart. So I'm very nervous because I don't know how many more episodes I get Max Medina. So I'm very nervous to continue watching right now. Oh, man. Okay, so the big thing in this episode is Lorelai is starting to prepare for her wedding, and she actually finally tells her mom that she's getting married. And on Rory's side, Rory goes to build a house and kind of finds out how behind she is for her extracurriculars and getting ready for Harvard. So Lorelai. Lorelai finally works up the courage to tell her mom at Friday night dinner that she's getting married. And so when she tells Emily, Emily's just like, oh, okay, well, I hope we're in town. Like, that is probably the coldest reaction to someone telling you that you're married ever. Like, oh my goodness, I felt so bad for Lorelai in that moment because I was like, yo, if I tell my parents I'm getting married and they tell me that, like, I may bust into tears because that's so heartbreaking. Like, you're so excited, and then for someone to just diminish the good news that you're telling them, that was cold. Emily was wrong for that. And see, so the other side of it is I understand why Emily reacted like that, but it was so wrong at the same time. Like, she was kind of just hurt, and she was pushing her hurt on Lorelai because she's like, I want you to feel how bad I'm feeling. And that was not the right way to go about it. Like, I mean, even if you found out later than everyone else about the wedding, you could have just been like, oh my goodness, that's so great. Like, you could have been excited, like, I heard already, or something. And she doesn't. She just tries to hurt Lorelai because she's hurt that Lorelai didn't tell her. And it's so, like, that scene honestly breaks my heart a little bit because I really feel for Lorelai. And I do like how later, like, Lorelai is just kind of, it's the anger in how Emily responded is just festering. And so she's on a date with Max, and eventually she makes Max go to her parents' house, and she confronts Emily. She's like, I tell you I'm getting married. You tell me this. Why? She's like, even you, I expected to be happy for me that I'm getting married. And then Emily goes off on Lorelai, and she actually tells her, yeah, well, now you understand how I feel when someone calls me and tells me my only daughter's getting married. So then Lorelai finds out that Emily already knew, and so then she leaves. And then she comes back the next day as kind of like a peace offering. And Lorelai, I really liked her in this whole episode, actually, and I just like how she was the bigger person. Like, she goes to her mom, she apologizes, and she's like, hey, can you help me pick up my veil? Like, it's kind of like a peace offering, like, hey, I want you to feel included because I'm sorry I excluded you previously. And so then Emily tells her the idea of to wear a tiara instead of a veil. And honestly, I think this show is where I got the idea where if I get married, I want a tiara with a veil. And honestly, I think Gilmore Girls is where I got this idea from. And so basically the veil or the tiara idea is because that's what Emily wore at her wedding, and she's like, oh, you can kind of be similar. So you kind of see them coming together, and I know that means a lot to Lorelai that Emily is starting to get more invested into the wedding, and Emily, you know, that made her feel good that her daughter asked her about it and that she's kind of like feeling included as well. So I like that part. Max, I liked it so much. You kind of get to hear about his parents, and his parents seem so precious. Oh my goodness. Like, I like how they give Max a check for $35 and they're like, it's one of 4 installments, so y'all cannot spend it all in one spot. Like, I just get the feeling that Max's parents are like hardworking people and they want to help. They may not have a lot to give, but they're like, oh, we're still going to give you a little bit. And I love it so much. Like, oh, so precious. And then you also, towards the end of the episode, you have a surprise wedding shower. The whole town of Stars Hollow comes together and they throw one for Max and Lorelai. And pretty much all the gifts are for Lorelai compared to Max. And so while they're at the shower, Lorelai realizes Luke is not there. So she goes to Luke. She's like, hey, it would mean a lot if you came to my shower to celebrate. I know you don't like parties, but we're having fun and you're an important person in my life. So I want you there. So then Luke actually comes out, and I love the scene where he's just sitting. He's just sitting with the 3 girls on a bench. Like, it's hilarious. And then Rory is looking into extracurriculars for Harvard. And so she goes to, it's pretty much like Habitat for Humanity where you go build houses. And so in her doing that, on the day, like when she's signing up to do it, Paris is like, you don't want to do that because I'm going to be there. And Paris doesn't want her to show up. So Rory, of course, shows up. She's like, you don't want me there? I'm going to be there. And so Lorelai like bedazzles a hammer for her. So she goes to the Habitat for Humanity and she's like building a house, and Paris is there, and Paris basically stressed out Rory because Paris is like, I've been doing stuff since I've been 4 years old to get to Harvard. And Rory's like, I'm so behind. So she's like overwhelmed, and she feels the need to have to play catch up to be in a better spot to actually go to Harvard. And so she's like stressing out about that. So she kind of goes off on Dean. They have an argument, and Dean's like, I could care less about Harvard. I just want to spend time with you. And Rory's like, I need to focus on Harvard. So they get into a whole argument, and I love where Rory's like, you're acting like you're 2. And then Dean's like, well, if I'm 2, I'll have time to grow up. And he walks away. So funny. And so they make up at the shower, and Dean's like, I'm sorry, I care about Harvard, I just also want to spend time with you. And Rory kind of calms down a little bit, and she's like, yeah, we'll spend time together. But I also like how Rory has done one house building session and she feels like she's a know-it-all in everything construction. So she's like talking to Kurt in one scene, and she like goes on, oh yeah, this gazebo is stable because it has 2x4s, it has structure, like she's listing all this construction stuff, and Kurt's like, what? And she's like, yeah, I built a house yesterday. Like, what? But it's also so true, because when I did Habitat for Humanity, I was feeling myself like, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I enjoyed this episode. Also, you got kind of a side story of Lane and Henry. They kind of brought it up. She met Henry last season at a party that she went to with Rory, and so they're kind of like in contact again. And then Lane, at the end of the episode, she goes in the car to go to the airport to go to Korea for who knows how long. And then you also have Suki and Jackson. Jackson is basically Jackson tells Suki, I'm not ready to get married yet, and Suki's like, I'm not either. And Jackson's like, well, we can move in instead. And Suki's like, what? Move in? Oh no. So that's basically where they're in. But yeah, I just kind of liked it because it had arguments, but I feel like in this episode everyone came together too. Like they kind of worked through their arguments, and it kind of ended on like a happier, more positive note. Let's see what the next episode brings, but I'm so nervous that Max Medina is about to be gone.
This has been another episode of Real Talk with Noelle.